Hi, Gary Brown. Can you hear me?
I can. Can you hear me?
I can. So it looks like, I think whoever is speaking, their box pops up on there.
Uh-huh.
So can you see, what do you see on the screen?
Melessa Fannin.
Hello.
But I don't see Melessa Fannin.
Oh, wait, hold on. Sorry. There we go.
Hi, Melissa.
Hello. Hey, I'm going to take this call real quick, okay?
Okay.
Okay. This is Melissa. Oh, good. I just didn't want another speaker have an emergency or something.
Oh, no.
Okay, let me just double check. We may be streaming on the other one right now. So let me just make sure. We might. Okay, we are not. So nobody can hear us right now.
Okay.
Just FYI. I'll let you know when they can.
Okay. Can you guys see my screen, the slides?
I can.
Okay. No notes, so just the slides, right?
So we can't see anybody in the session.
Correct. We can't see anybody in the session. I can moderate the chat, so monitor the chat, so I can, how do you want the questions when they come in? Do you want me to put them in here? Go ahead.
I can't see people. Then I can't see their body language.
Yeah, this is more of a seminar or webinar type of platform.
Sterile.
Yeah, I have it up. It's the questions that are in the session, right, Melissa?
Yeah, if you have it up, you can see it.
Yeah, I have my iPad here, so I'm going to try to monitor too. So
and make sure that your iPad is muted, or else you might cause an echo.
Yeah, I think I.
Okay.
So for my Halloween costume.
You're
This is my Halloween costume.
You're so funny, Gary Brown.
So when I begin the session, I will review the CEUs with the attendees.
Okay.
And then I'll have a poll that they can answer for their CEUs, and then I will introduce you.
Sounds
so
good.
when we do all this supervisor training next month or whenever we're going to do it, I won't be able to see anybody then either.
No, then you will.
Oh, I will.
We won't be doing it through here. We'll be doing it through a regular Zoom. This is just because of the conference. So I can turn their cameras on for you.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Yeah.
Well, that's good news, Gary Brown.
Yeah.
So I know all these people real well, so I know whose faces I want to pay attention to.
Yes.
Oh, well. Melissa's going to do all the work anyway. I'm just going to.
Yes.
Okay.
So, yeah. Melissa, do you go by Melissa or Missy?
I go by Missy. My real name is Melissa.
Oh, Melissa. Okay.
That I learned yesterday.
Yeah. Okay. Yes. Melissa. Okay. So I have. Are you going to monitor the chat then, and you're going to answer the
Yeah,
question?
I'm going to try to do that. Because I have it sitting right here, so I'm hoping I can monitor it at the same time. I plan to just look down every once in a while to see if anything's up here.
I'll take care of anything. If someone's having trouble, so I'll take care of them.
Okay. If you see me start missing them, then you might want to interrupt us. But because I want to make this as interactive as possible. Usually that's what these sessions are. So we probably don't have a whole hour's worth of content because we usually have a lot of conversation. So I'm hoping people will type in some questions.
Okay.
Something flashed up on the screen that we had a host and their name, but I don't see them.
Okay, so that is probably the person that is running. Yes, his name is Eel, and he's running the Zoom for us. So he can stream us into the session.
Which I think he just did because I can see us now. So it looks like we're
good.
probably.
That's great. That's what he was doing. Okay.
So now they can hear us, Gary Brown. So
yes.
So I have to behave myself.
Well, when does that happen?
It happened yesterday between 4 and 4:30.
Nice. Nicely done.
Okay.
Excuse me. That's not COVID.
I always say that too whenever I cough. Okay.
I went to the store the other day and I had to have my son run and get me a bottle of water because I don't know where it came from. And I thought, oh my gosh, I'm going to get stoned out of here.
You know, my favorite people in stores are
Who's that?
the people who wear their masks right here.
Oh, well, yeah.
Those are my favorite people.
Definitely. Okay, I launched the poll. So as people hop on, they can tell us what CEU they want. So yes, Gary, about your session, I will be able to organize dates for you tomorrow, okay?
Okay.
Sorry for the delay.
You been busy or something?
Kinda.
Kinda.
Kinda, just a little busy.
I have been too.
I bet.
No, I understand that putting a conference together, especially one like this, would be more or less a zoo.
Oh, it's harder to do online conferences than in person.
Oh, much harder. I can only imagine.
Especially the first time. And if it's the first time you use in the platform.
Yeah, definitely. It's been a learning curve for sure.
I got to get used to that Melessa.
Or you could just call me Missy.
People call me Missy too.
I always thought it was Melessa. I didn't know it was literally the way it's spelled.
Like it's spelled, I know.
I met a Melissa here. It's Melissa with an N.
Really?
Yeah, that's my first. I didn't know how to pronounce it at first.
Nobody has that issue with my name.
It's a pretty vanilla name. I have to give you that one.
Pretty Manila. Yeah.
Can't mess that one up.
No.
Yep. They took one look at me and they went, he's a Manila kind of guy. How many people are attending the conference?
We have 245.
Okay, so it is down considerably.
Yeah, in person, I think the last time we had one in person, it was 250.
How many signed up for the session?
Currently, we have 56.
But once people know you're speaking, they'll probably jump in, Gary.
Yeah.
That's okay.
Yeah. And I'll begin promptly at 11:30.
Do we start at 11:30 or we start at 11:45?
11:30. We only give them 15-minute breaks in between.
They get a more comfortable office chair at home.
Okay. Welcome, everybody. Thank you so much. We really appreciate having you at our conference this year. I have launched a poll that is going to be for your CEUs. If you would like a CEU for this session, please answer the poll. And I'll also launch one at the end of the session to close out the CEU questions. We would like to welcome you to today's session. We have Gary Brown, a CPA director at Brady Ware, one of our platinum sponsors, and Melessa Behymer, my apologies, CPA director at Brady Ware. And if you have any questions, please post them in the chat and we'll answer them throughout the session today. And we will end today just about an hour from now. If you feel like you're in the wrong room, please go up to the blue square on the left part of your screen and you can navigate to the correct session you should be in. Thank you very much and enjoy the session.
Thank you,
Good
Melissa.
morning, everyone. Is it morning or is it afternoon? Good morning.
Almost afternoon. Well, hi guys. Gary and I are happy to be here with you in this virtual webinar today. We appreciate you taking your time to be with us, and we hope you walk away with some knowledge that you didn't have before. I did attend a session earlier this morning, so I do realize that some of this may be duplicate, but I believe we're going in a little bit deeper detail, so hopefully you're going to walk away with something. Gary and I are very sad that we can't see you. Gary loves to see it when everyone rolls their eyes. So if he invokes an eye rolling, please feel free to put it in the chat. I am monitoring the chat at the same time. We also want to make this as interactive as possible. If you've been to one of Gary's sessions, you know he'll call you out, but unfortunately he can't see you, so you're a little safe, but we would like to see you put some comments and questions in there. I don't believe I've prepared quite an hour, so we should have time at the end if there are any issues or questions you have that maybe we haven't covered. So let me go over our agenda. We're going to look at fiscal year 21 inflation factors, ceilings, and medians, median cost in each category by peer group, average census by peer group, and we're going to give you an outlook for fiscal year 2020 for whatever good that is, how we're going to get our magic ball out and take a look at it. We're going to talk about cost reporting, how we're going to deal with the pandemic funding and our expenses, single audit requirements, quality incentives, hospice care and ICFs. We're going to look at the difference between ICF waiver respite and short-term stays. And then a recent hot topic, patient liability. Gary's going to give us details on that. So let's jump in right away. So here we have our inflation factors. So if we're looking at these, we're looking at the top row is our direct. We have our old methodology, new methodology, and what it was in fiscal year 20. So our direct inflation is employment cost index for total compensation, healthcare, and social assistance. So you see that that did go down a little bit compared to the prior year. The largest change is in our other protected, which is basically estimated every year. And so they estimate the inflation rate for an 18-month period. And if the actual rate comes in different, they're going to add or subtract from the following year. So you can see a significant decrease. So they didn't do a very good estimate in the prior years. That was a 4.1%. 4.11% decrease. The indirect inflation went up a little bit, 1.7%. The next table is our ceilings. And so we have our old methodology, which was basically being covered under temp law when it changed to the new methodology, which is being calculated as a percentage of median. Our direct cost per case mix unit ceiling in peer group 1 and 3 showed our largest increases in fiscal year 21. Indirect ceiling for all of the peer groups had an increase in fiscal year 21. And also the indirect efficiency ceilings all had increases. Is there some, you want to add to this, Gary?
Yeah, you know, as we predicted, a couple of years into the new reimbursement system, things are starting to level off. So the first year, it was a pretty dramatic increase in rates, almost 11%. The second year, it was close to a little bit under 6%. And then this year, we're looking at a little bit less than 2.5%. So, you know, the system is definitely starting to level off. And we're actually, as you can see in some of the peer groups, we are actually seeing some decline in some of the rates. To remind everybody how these are calculated, for both direct and indirect, they are stagnant percentages above the median. That those percentages are in state law, so they do not change. We'll show you on a slide a little bit from now how that is done, but we're definitely starting to see a leveling off in the system.
All right. And on this one here, we have our medians. So we're looking at old methodology, new methodology compared to fiscal year 20. And so we can see in our protected, we have that broken down here with or without bed tax. So protected without bed tax actually decreased from fiscal year 20. So the entire increase really from the protected is due to the bed tax. It's probably not a surprise to anyone. Capital median, we show a slight decrease from fiscal year. Indices went up and cost decrease. This was something that I think Gary was going to dig into a little bit further. The pieces that components that make this up, facility equipment and other buildings, we suspect maybe it's equipment that's driving it down, but he was going to look into that a little further. Our indirect median increased from fiscal year 20 to 21 across the board. The last numbers are your IAFs under the old methodology, and we have the ODDP by peer group. Interesting nugget on this one is that all but one peer group had a decrease in their ODDP compared to the prior year. A couple of them went down to almost 3%. So you want to comment on that, Gary?
Yeah, a couple of things. A reminder, when you're looking at the different peer groups, we now have 5. We used to have 3 under the old system. Peer group 1 was large facilities, which were 9 or greater. Peer group 2 were small facilities, 8 or less. And peer group 3, which is now peer group 5, where the DC downsized the 120 beds that were created to downsize ICF. So when you're looking at this chart, it's a little bit difficult because they don't directly line up with the old peer groups. So keep that in mind when you're looking at it. The other kind of concerning thing, and you know, I'm sure someone might chime in on this, is we can continue to see a decline in the average ODDP scores, which is a little bit concerning to me. You know, my guess is that is because, not because we are serving individuals with less needs. It is because of the way providers are being told that they can and can't answer certain questions and what people have experienced through exception reviews. So that's a little bit concerning that I continue year after year to see those numbers go down when in fact we are probably serving a population that is likely more needy than in the past.
Good comments, Gary. Okay, so here we have our fair rental value calculation. Obviously, that was not how it was done under the old methodology. So we have the new compared to fiscal year 20. So these values here by peer group are the cost of construction value used in the fair rental value calculation. Two rates, one for 9 beds or more, one for 8 or less. As you can see, it definitely is an incentive for the smaller settings, as that is a larger rate. Geographic location also drives this value. Both of these rates had an increase over fiscal year 20. You know, obviously this points to with the amounts and the that are for the smaller settings, that it's, you know, in line with Dodd's goals of smaller settings. There was no change to the home office and record storage. And below we have, again, where Gary was just reminding us of what those bed sizes by peer group look like in the prior year compared to this year. Anything on this, Gary?
Yeah, a couple of things. We're definitely seeing a leveling off in fair rental value in the calculation, even though you know, the factor that's being used to calculate it is going up. So just a reminder that there are 3 different sections to fair rental value. There's the ICF facility itself. There are secondary buildings, which the vast majority of those are you know, offices. And then there are the assets that get added to it, you know, either improvements, or which goes to the log, or things such as refrigerators, couches, chairs, etc. That is calculated separately. So, you know, one of the things I think we're going to dive into is seeing what is causing a leveling off. For those of you that lease facilities, it is really important that any of the improvements that are done by the lessor get included in the reporting. It does not have to be an expenditure that you made in that calculation. And historically, you're going to really need to keep track of these, because the bottom line is they get spread over 40 years. So even though they may fall off of, you know, one of your individual depreciation schedule, you have to continue to report those over time to make sure that you're getting the re-aging calculation for the facility itself up where it belongs.
Okay, since we were talking about fair value, I thought it would take a minute from the numbers and kind of remind us of some of the key points with our fair rental value, which now requires you to log your capital assets on log 2 on the cost report. There's no longer a difference between extensive and non-extensive renovations. A reminder, renovation is considered a capital project that extends the life of a building or increases productivity or improves safety. And if you expand or extend your square foot or your bed count, these would go on log 1. The amounts don't go on both logs, so to remember that. Don't forget your equipment, which is defined as non-movable equipment affixed to the structure that would not be transferred if moved. These will go on log 2. So your HVAC system, your soft water systems, anything that is affixed to the property also goes on that log. So we've had questions in the past, are your swimming pools, your parking lots and training rooms renovations included in log 2? The answer to that is yes, if there is a sidewalk connecting them to the main facilities. That's kind of and those facilities are used for ICF activities. So you want to keep that in mind. If you have that walkway, that those can be included. And also your land improvements are also included in those logs. And, you know, remember, additions to your log 1 and 2 increases the value of your facility and will go in the calculation to re-age the facility and lead to capital improvement or improve capital reimbursement. So you don't want to miss anything. Your secondary buildings, home office and record storage are reported in a the secondary attachment. They will not be re-aged based on capital improvements for renovations and additions. So I think we saw a couple of years ago, dug into our details. I think the first year that we did the fair rental value, there weren't a lot of questions. The second year, we got a lot of questions. So I think they kind of cleaned up, any questions they had going forward. So I think we want to make sure that we're continuing best practices going forward. So I know that they want as much detail as possible on those logs. So if you're renovating a bathroom and a bedroom, you want to list each one of those separately, and you want to list it in as much detail as possible. So renovation to an upstairs bathroom and in the far left bedroom. So to be as specific as you can to avoid maybe questions coming back. Now, you do need to maintain your invoices for renovations and additions for a longer time period than probably is your normal document retention. DODD has allowing you to upload your invoices with the cost report to ensure they're available at any point that you get audited. We did have the ICF group met and we did discuss the fact that, invoices from 20 years ago when you purchased the building are not going to be available. But I believe the expectation is from the time that fair rental value came into play, whatever your document retention period was, say it was 5 years, they would expect from that period when it started 5 years back, you would have maintained those invoices. Because under audit, they could ask for these, so if you're audited in 10 years, they're going to ask for the invoices for the items that you put on your log this year. So, best practices would be to upload. I believe that they probably would have no problem with you going back and gathering all the old invoices you have and uploading them. That would just might be, it's going to be outside your normal document retention. So I just wanted to make sure everybody was aware of that. Anything on this, Gary?
Yeah, I want to emphasize the audit issue. The state auditor's office is the state entity that are doing these audits, not DODD, not the Department of Medicaid. They have taken very, very, very strict interpretations of the regs, not only Ohio's regs, but the federal regs. CMS publication 15-1. So some of the areas that we see a little bit of concern in is number one, the state auditor's office expects to see a value attached to an asset throughout its lifetime. So for example, if you have an automobile and you depreciate it over 4 years, according to the hospital guide that's in the attachment to the rule, they expect to see what the salvage value of that is expected to be in 4 years from now. Same thing with a couch, same thing with a refrigerator. They've even come out and said that, a litmus test is 10%. If you can't figure out what the value should be. This is an ongoing discussion we're having with them. We all know that if you buy a couch and you put it in the living room and folks use it for 7 years or 10 years, it's not going to have any value at the end of its life. If you determine that, you have got to document that in your policies and procedures on how you depreciate and how you establish salvage value of an asset. To complicate this a little bit further, we're starting to see audits where you have a salvage value or you have an asset that is disposed of prior to its total depreciated life. in which you are allowed to cost report the full expense once you dispose. Those are getting questioned by the state auditor's office as far as being allowable expenditures. So I'm just pointing these things out right now because we're dealing with a different animal when we're looking at the state auditor's office and how they view things. Ultimately, the Department of DD and ultimately the Department of Medicaid, has the responsibility and the power to either accept or not accept those findings from the state auditor's office. So I just wanted to let everybody know that there are some conversations going on right now around how they are viewing things. One more I'm going to throw in there is they're starting to question in active treatment day services indirect cost. I'm going to say this as kindly as I can. But we're going to have to educate them. There are lots of indirect costs in active treatment day services. So this is just an ongoing issue that we have with audit. So when Missy says, make sure you document, make sure you keep, make sure you upload, make sure you do it.
All right, good advice. All right, now we have our cost per case mix unit, median, and ceiling for direct and indirect by peer group. We can see that the percentage of the ceilings are above the median, and the percentage of the percentage here shows the percentage of the costs that are covered. You can note that that peer group 5, as Gary said, is the downsized DCs, and that group has a different formula than everyone else, where you will see that they're expected to have 95% of the median cost covered by the ceiling. You can see that the peer group for this group has the highest ceiling, and again, incentivizing the smaller settings. We have the same information here for the indirect category. You can see the gap between the median and the ceiling is closing in on peer 1, and that peer group 4 is incentivized with a larger ceiling. Comments on that, Gary?
Yeah, a couple of things. Under direct, if you look at peer group 5, those are the DC downsize. Those are calculated differently. They are not a percentage above the median as the other peer groups are. It's actually 95% of all ICFs are covered within that ceiling. So we actually impute the above the median 18%. You'll see over on the far right-hand side, it's really 95%. Again, this is a great improvement over the old system that was being driven by temporary law to keep all the payment rates down. So when we look at these cost coverages of as 79% to 83% for all of those peer groups, those are very much in line with the old statute that the new reimbursement system replaced before they started temporary law changes to mitigate them. So really happy to see that. Actually, under the old system, it was about 78, 79%. So these are slightly higher. On the indirect care side, these are drastically higher than the old system under temporary law. I actually calculated, I don't know the exact number, but we are down into the 40-something percentile of facilities covered under the old indirect ceiling under temporary law in the old system. It was devastating. Again, except for the large peer group 1 in indirect, these percentages are very much in line with the old reimbursement system. So the moral of that story is that the new reimbursement system, for all practical purposes, overall, it is mirroring what the old state statute came out to be before they started instituting all the temporary law changes. So really the only thing that has drastically changed in these two ceiling areas is how much weight they give to small facilities versus larger facilities. So when you look at the percentage above the median for peer group 4, it's 12%. If you look at it for peer group 1, it is 8%. So the bottom line is they put more funding into small facility cost coverage than they did into large. That was a philosophical change, not a mathematical one. So just pointing those things out.
Good point. Here we have our average census by peer group. So we had a total of 419 facilities. 48 of those had 17 beds or more. 38 had 9 to 16 beds. 187 in peer group 3, which is 7 to 8 beds, that is our largest peer group. That's 45% of all of the facilities. 127 4 to 6 beds, and the downsized DCs, there are 19 of those. So we have our total rate here for fiscal year 21, 350.87, which we're showing about a 2.3% increase over fiscal year 20. We also listed out here 18 and 19 for you to see. 4836 in certified beds and 93.6% occupancy. Anything on that one, Gary?
Yeah, I mean, again, we still have more facilities that are 7, 8 bed. Actually, I should just say 8 bed because there are very few 7 beds in the state, 187 of them. On the right-hand side, you can see that, the first year, drastic increase, second year, about half that, and now we're leveling off. And in the third year of the new reimbursement system, we also, I hope a number that people see is the number of certified beds that we now have in the system is about 1,000 less than we had 5 years ago. That number was 5,800. Occupancy still continues to be an issue. 5 years ago, we were at 98% plus, and that's the way the system had been forever. We are now down below 94% occupancy system-wide. I do expect to see that number to be up a little bit in the next calendar year, basically because of COVID. I know a lot of people that are actually serving more people. I hope I'm right on that because it does chop you off in the calculation of allowable costs in certain ceilings.
Yep. All right, and here is our Outlook 22. I'm sure Gary will have comments on this one, but the ICF reimbursement group met recently, and DODD is proposing that the funding stay flat for fiscal year 22. Could use temp law to do that, to hold to the fiscal year 21 funding levels. We don't know yet. We also put on here the breakdown between the federal, the franchise fee, and the general revenue funds over the past 3 years. I think the thing that jumps out is to see how much the greatly decreased the GFR percentage from 2019. There was a $50,000 or $50 million decrease. So, we could probably assume that with everything in the federal government, with all the CARES Act money they're paying out, that maybe the federal funding might decrease. I think much is unknown. The reimbursement group has asked to wait and see how the numbers shake out and before any funding decisions are made. And Gary, you probably have some more comments on that.
Yeah, so if you look at 2021, you'll see that 568 million is about a 4% increase over the 546 million, which doesn't reconcile with the 2.34% increase. So I actually sent Clay an email yesterday and said, can you tell me where that number came from? And he responded and said, yeah, we did that before. You know, we had the data for rate setting. So that $568 million number is an old number. By the way, these are numbers that were given to us by the department. So he did say that through September, we're running below that. We do have the kids that are starting to get served now, the increase in the bed tax, about $10–11 million was going to be used to serve kids. We are starting to see some of that happening. So they're projecting out those numbers, but Clay committed to give me periodic updates on you know, that where we're at in that spending pattern this year. The bottom line interesting number is that GRF, the amount that the state is spending is significantly below 2019. So even if you look at the 167 million, that's a lot lower than 183 million in 2019. The department, we had a call with all of the stakeholders about 2 or 3 weeks ago, where the department proposed to, they are going to propose that the funding be flat in the next biennia compared to the statewide average rates of FY21, which is $350 a day. What that would mean is they would most likely want to institute again temporary law in the budget bill, because I'm pretty sure they would not plan on writing that in permanent law. So again, it would be temporary law. So we are, you know, we've got our feet wet in the new reimbursement system, and they're already talking about temporary law again. So they wanted to know what our ideas would be around how we would accomplish this. The trade association banded together, and we were not interested at this time in talking about how we would do that. Frankly, we're not right now thinking that we want to support that. So what we are doing is gathering information from the department and keeping close tabs on the state budget in its entirety so that we can make the argument that it doesn't need to happen. As a side note, I will tell you that this is going to be an extremely different cost reporting year. We're going to go into some of that next, but we know that you have a staffing crisis. We know that you do not have enough staff. And we know that anecdotally, looking at all of our different client bases, that we have ICFs whose expenditures have actually gone down in 2020 compared to 2019. So, one of the things I'm going to be working with Opera on is how do we gather some information, frankly, prior to the budget process, which will start to come out in probably February, around some of these initiatives so that we make sure that we have good information when we're trying to combat the current proposal of flat funding going into the next biennia.
All right. Gary Brown, we have not had one eye roll or question yet.
Nobody's eye rolled?
Nobody has eye rolled.
Oh
Maybe the eye rollers aren't on. All right, we're gonna, if you do have a question, please put it in there. I am watching. So we're gonna shift over to cost reporting on the COVID pandemic funding and expenses. And I know that Ashley hit this earlier I think we're going to go in a little bit deeper detail. As was mentioned earlier, the masks, the gloves, the gowns, thanks to Gary Brown's asking and prodding, are going under other protected costs in medical supplies. The next thing here on the slide is, hopefully this isn't news to anyone, but the payments to individuals, whether that was through additional unemployment compensation or a refundable tax credit, these funds do not count towards the individual's cost of care. So hopefully no one did that incorrectly. So now let's move into some of these funding sources. And so BWC obviously already gave a dividend out, and DeWine's announcement yesterday that another $5 billion in dividends are coming. And so the Department of Medicaid did issue an advisory level letter 647 in September. And I have to say that it probably left us with more questions than answers. I don't know how to pull that up right now. I did have it, but I think we worked with Opera and sent probably 2 pages of questions on clarification. And I think some of them were still waiting to be clarified. But let's talk about a little bit of the specifics of what we do know. So the BWC dividend, right now it's going to be reported under other revenue, and no offset is going to be required, with the caveat of stay tuned, because they are still verifying this with Medicaid. There was some question about there being some sort of reconciliation of these funds, and ours and Opera's response to that was, these funds didn't have any requirements attached to them, so what would you be reconciling them to? You'll see the next page, the other fundings have reconciliation requirements, and those kind of make sense. So I think we've asked them to go back and clarify to make sure that there is not going to be any offset. Obviously, with the next $5 billion coming out, that could be significant funding for some. So we want to make sure that we get it right. Our stance is this should be considered the same as the billion back has always been considered. So we will see what comes back on that. I didn't hear Ashley say anything about that today when I was listening to her, but I think there's still some questions that we're waiting to be clarified. Do you have anything on that, Gary, before I go to the next slide?
Yeah, folks, this is clear as mud. I can honestly tell you that when I read the memo from the Department of Medicaid, I read it and I said, obviously I'm not giving this enough attention. I better put it down and read it again in a few minutes. And so I waited a few hours, I picked it up, I read it again, and I was probably equally as confused as the first time I read it. So either I'm getting old and I can't read anymore, or it is really not clear. So I'm going to expand a little bit. This appears to be what I call a paper chasing exercise. So when you see reported on line 5400, but don't offset costs, and then you see in the next sentence, there will be a reconciliation. When I think in terms of reconciliation, I think in terms of, is somebody going to ask for the money back? And in the audit process, they are going to look at whether or not you met the criteria, either in reduced revenue or increased expenditures under each one of these, in accordance with the regulations that were put out on how you were to use this money. Then when they say things like don't double dip, and some of them cross the same line items, like direct care staff, at the end of the day, what it tells me is, well, I can attribute some of my payroll to one of them, and then I would attribute some of my other payroll to another one of them. So stay tuned on this. We are going to continue to, and believe me, Ashley and I have had probably a dozen conversations in the last 6 months on these subject matters because, as you well know, criteria, especially under PPP, has changed multiple times. How it interacts with how your rates are going to be set in the future is a little bit daunting right now, because we do have these influx of funds. We do have, we all know that we're most likely, if you were to offset it, it would have a dramatic impact on what your rates would look like the year after. What I want to make sure is that when they circle around, so long as you have accounted for them properly on paper and can support that there will be no quote unquote a reconciliation in terms of paying money back. So on this one, we're going to tell you to stay tuned and assure you that we're going to keep after it. My understanding is the department is not going to have schedules on the cost report for reconciliation for these different funds. So we're going to have to come up with ways to make sure that that's being done in accordance with how the funds were put out and making sure that you can justify keeping those.
Absolutely. And so here are the rest of the funds that they had commented on. The coronavirus funds, remember that was coming from the state for ICFs. Those need to be expended by the end of the year, by the December 30th. They gave you the uses for those, testing, quarantine, safety measures, PPP. Hazard pay and overtime are allowable uses of that fund if it is related to COVID. Again, on line 5400 and no offset reconciliation available for audit. So this one is a little different, kind of like the BWC. There's no reporting requirements as of right now for the CRF funds. So this one you will have to create your own reconciliation. And so I suggest if you got provider relief funds, also you do it in a similar way, which that one does have to be reported, that you are going to be able upon audit to show them what expenses you were using to cover or what payroll, and be able to support that with invoices. For the provider relief fund, these funds are covering from March through the last reporting date for this one is July 31st, 21. So you don't have to expend all of these funds by the end of the year. There are 2 reporting periods. One's going to be January for the funds that you spent in 2020, and then anything you spend in 2021, you have to report on those July 31st. The uses were the same as for the CRF, plus, staff training, construction of temporary structures. Maybe you did that to expand day services, technology to expand or preserve care, lost revenue due to COVID. Again, same reporting on 5400, no offset, reconciliation available upon audit. This, for the provider relief fund, you will have that reconciliation because you are going to have to report that information. Now, I don't believe the reporting is going to require you to show support of the invoices and the payroll, so you want to make sure you do have that available. Paycheck Protection Program, again, everything is the same reporting wise. Again, this one you will have this, you will have to do the reporting to get your forgiveness, so you will have all that information. So again, you just need to have a methodology, make sure that you maintain all of this support for how all these funds are expended. One that we brought up to Ashley was the SBA debt forgiveness. So if you had an SBA loan existing before COVID, the SBA just came in and made 6 months of payments for you. So in order to reduce your debt, you're recording that as revenue. So no offset 5400. when I asked about reconciliation, because there was no use of funds for this, it was as long as you're complying with whatever requirements of SBA, which as far as I know, there really weren't any. They just came in and made your payment. So I would just make sure that you keep all your data and your loan documents and have everything available if you are audited. Again, and Gary mentioned this already, but I think this is a good to mention again, is double dipping. So you don't want to use the same expense to ask for, the coronavirus and the provider relief fund. Payroll could get sticky if you had the PPP funds too. So you need to be very diligent in making sure you map out how all of these funds were used to make sure that you can support them if you get audited. Anything else on that one, Gary?
Nope.
No, I think that's...
By the way, folks, Missy has done an extensive amount of work on these subject matters. So if you have any questions, she's the one who's really staying on top of it.
This slide is talking about single audits. So this one might be, there's not a lot of information out there. I'm thinking people are going to stumble upon this, but a single audit is required for an organization that expends more than $750,000 in federal funds. So the provider relief and the coronavirus funds are being considered under this federal funding for the 750. Luckily, they have decided that the payroll protection program is not going to be covered under single audit, or pretty much a lot of single audits will be held necessary. So if you fall into this category, you're going to need to let your accountant know pretty soon. One thing to note, your Medicaid funding, although it is a piece of it is federal, it is not considered part of the $750,000 for the audit requirement. So unless you have any other grants that might have federal funding attached to them, these two funds, the PRF and the CRF, might be the only two. So these audits would require you to have a financial statement audit. It would also require you to have a compliance audit. And so that compliance audit is going to dig into everything we talked about on the previous slide. Did you spend the monies properly within the right time period? Did you not double dip on counting how you accounted for them? And then these also look into your internal controls. That's part of this this audit. So if you fall in this category and it might be your first time, you might want to reach out to someone sooner than later to make sure you have things set up. There's also time requirements. These audits are required to be submitted to the government within 1 month of issuing the financial statements, or within 9 months after your year end. So there is a time constraint in that. Also, probably need to point out, these audits are typically for not-for-profits, but for-profits do fall under this requirement too. It's unusual because for-profits don't normally get federal funding, but these two funds went to for-profits also. So if you received overhead $750,000, you are required also. The audit requirement for them is a little different. You can do a single audit, or you can choose to have a government auditing standards audit. But either way, you still have to have that audit within the time period. So.
And where this really plays in is if you're a for-profit and you've never had an audit before, now you have to have one.
Right. Could get sticky. All right, quality incentive, and they kind of hit on this earlier, and we're going to go in, I think, a little bit more detail. As I noted earlier, they took 1% of the direct support personnel payment to be used to fund the quality indicators. And those 5 quality indicators are resident satisfaction survey, ensure your ISPs are person-centered, community integration, DSP training specific to resident or staff needs, staff retention, and that includes measuring turnover. So to note that this is a voluntary program, you don't have to participate. You can participate in one or more of the indicators. Your policies should be in place and enacted by March 31st. As I mentioned earlier, if you do extend your cost report, those still need to be enacted, and those policies need to be submitted with your extension. They noted earlier also that DODD plans on starting their desk reviews and on-site visits in January of 2022. So it's the math on calculating how much your potential piece of this could be. It's all really going to be determined on how many people are going after the quality incentives, but they're taking this, adding up all of the providers who have points for indicators, calculate 1% of this desk reviewed direct costs, say maybe that's $3 million. Then they take that 3 million divided by the sum of all the inpatient day times points for all providers to come up with what your daily rate could be added to your reimbursement. Gary's done the math a couple of times for me and showed that it could potentially be a lot of work to enact these policies for very little return. So I think you need to weigh that. If I would say if these are maybe programs that you already have in place and you just haven't formalized, then you're not out anything, kind of just writing the formal policy and you already have them in. If it's going to take a lot of work to enact these, it might be an issue that you think about whether it's worth your time to enact that. You have something to add on that, Gary?
Yeah, to kind of give you an indication, we're probably talking about maybe $3.6, $3.7 million system-wide. If everybody got every point, you would end up with about $775 per person that you serve for the entire year. We're not telling you not to do this. We're telling you that this may be the most massive paper chase and mathematical accounting nightmare ever done for $3.7 million. To give you an analogy, you guys were paying about $3.5 million in bed tax that you weren't getting reimbursed for before we changed how bed tax gets paid based on actual inpatient days, which, by the way, we got all that money back for you, that you used to lose in the past because you had vacancies. So, it is not a huge amount of money. It is a huge paper chase, and you will not know how much you got until they do the math at the end of the day and add up the, I don't know, maybe hundreds of thousands of points. It's going to be interesting. Let me put it that way. This will be, as I said, it'll probably be the most labor intensive thing we've ever done, around $3.7 million.
Thanks, Gary. Again, not telling you not to do it. We're just trying to give you the math behind it and what it might lead to. Okay, I thought we didn't really quite have an hour and we're almost done. So let's get 3 more slides here. Hospice care and ICF. So effective July 1, individuals receiving hospice care will remain on the ICF roster, different from before. They will also be assessed and included in the ODDP of the facility and reported in the inpatient days for the franchise fee permit. Not eligible for bed hold days. And so the hospice agency is responsible for coordinating services and reimbursement. Therefore, the ICF provider is required to have a contract with hospice provider, and they will bill hospice for their services. Kind of cut and dry. Anything on that one, Gary?
Nope. Go forward.
And here we have. Here's our analysis of ICF waiver respite versus short-term ICF stays. So when you look at these two programs, under the respite, it's billed at an individual's waiver. Average rate is $212. You must be a certified residential respite provider, have an open licensed bed or receive a waiver. Individuals are only eligible up to 90 days within a waiver span, and this doesn't include room and board, day service, transportation. Compared to short-term ICF stay, you're going to bill revenue code 160. You're going to be reimbursed your per diem rate, which right now we just discussed averages $350. Individual must be admitted to the ICF, and the individual is eligible for up to 90 consecutive days without being disenrolled into waiver. So a little different, not 90 days within a span, it's 90 consecutive days, not total days. So
guys, this is a big deal. So for years and years and years and years, people have been doing respite under the waiver in an ICF at the rate of now up to $212 a day. It does not include room and board. Most of you are not collecting any room and board from anybody. You're not charging for transportation. To a large extent, if you're doing the day services, there is so much confusion around this subject matter. I have spent a ton of time on it because the bottom line is you just lose money if you do respite. So I encourage you to, when you go to accept somebody for, I'm going to call it a short-term stay, don't quit calling it respite. I don't care if the person's on the waiver or not, that you bill Medicaid using revenue code 160 so that you get your full rate. Down at the bottom there, it says individual up to 90 consecutive days without being disenrolled from the waiver. That is consecutive. So literally a person could be in an ICF for, I'll just say 250 days a year, so long as they come and go and come and go and come and go, and none of those stints are more than 90 days. There are a lot of county boards that for some reason or another don't want to do this, which is beyond my comprehension. And what I also know is a lot of you are doing a lot more respite or short-term stays than you used to. And this has become a big financial deal. So if you want any more information on this, more than happy to help you with that. There's a really big difference between your per diem rate and $212 a day.
alrighty. And then patient liability, I think you were going to take this one, Gary.
Yeah, recently this has come up that the local JFS is not changing the patient liability amount for people in ICFs. For some reason, they believe they're not supposed to be doing it. We're trying to get to the bottom of it. Ashley and I had a telephone conversation a couple of days ago around the subject. The bottom line is, this is what I believe, the bottom line is that you are the collection agent for patient liability. The department, the state has put that on you. So even if the determination amount is wrong, you still have to collect the right amount because someday they're going to fix it. This is no different than if they overpay you for somebody because they moved out and they keep paying you, or someone's deceased and they keep paying you, or someone actually has SSI and they haven't changed the liability amount yet. They will someday, and they will come get the money from you. So the bottom line is you have to calculate how much patient liability should be in accordance with the rule. I've already sent all this stuff to Opera, by the way, and the department, because they're having a hard time getting their heads around it too. You're responsible for collecting it. You should escrow the money. So you do collect it. And once the final determination is made, you can either take the money because it's yours anyway. Patient liability is a portion of the rate. They pay you the net, or you can give money back to the individual in the case that your calculation was wrong. You are escrowing the money. I encourage you not to go ahead and give it to the individual because their determination is wrong. And I encourage you not to spend it because in 2 years from now, they may fix it and it will come out of your pocket.
Good advice.
Yep.
All right. Well, I have to say we didn't have any questions other than someone asking for the slide deck, which I will provide that to Melissa so she can send out. So if you let her know, I don't know if she's on the line, if she's sending that to everyone or only those that ask. So if you want that.
I will send it to everybody that has pre-registered, and
Okay.
if somebody has not pre-registered, I've put in the comments to email me.
All right.
No questions. All right.
I got it. So I got some thanks, and Shelley Wharton said, great presentation, and more thanks. So yeah, just thanks. We must have given them all the information, Gary. We did a great job.
And stay tuned to more from Gary with a session that's coming up, Frontline Supervisor session coming up in November. We'll have that information out to you.
And Gary will be able to see you on that one, so he's going to be quite excited. So he likes to see your eyeballs.
Jamie Steele says, Gary, I could listen to you all day.
Well, he can have my office and he can do that.
I'll go get my snow boots on early.
Thank you both very much. And thank you again for being a platinum sponsor. We really appreciate your support, and all the attendees, thank you for your support, and have a wonderful day.
Thank you,
Melissa. Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Hey.
We probably have to get out, right?
We probably do, but hey, that was good. No questions, but we got lots.
That means we're either really good or really bad. I'm not sure which. We'll find out.
We got lots of people saying thanks, good information. Thank you. We got Dan was listening, Becky Sharp, Shelley Wharton. So we had some big wigs in there.
Dan's texting me, so. Yeah.
All right. Well, great job, Gary Brown, as usual. Thanks for letting me be part of it.
No problem. Bye.
All right. Bye.